He won't fail you. That's why you're here tonight. He's got his eyes on you. I remember being in a room a little like this, and I'd introduced one of my friends, an African-American pastor from South Los Angeles, and we'd been backstage for a while, and I noticed backstage he was pensively looking out at the crowd, and he kept kind of looking back, and the more time went on, the more gravitas I saw on his countenance, like there was a weight on him. Like there was something he was supposed to deliver, and he needed to make sure that he got it delivered. I came out front center. There were about 10, 12,000 people there, and I just said, my friend is going to share with you. And when my pastor friend from South Los Angeles walked out, his name was E.V. Hill. He looked out at this massive crowd, and all of a sudden his heart was just, he wondered if they knew. And so he just said in his wonderful way that he could say one sentence that it equaled about 30 minutes worth of my words. He'd say, God has a plan for you. God has a plan for you. I was backstage looking out, wondering, how are they responding? What do they look like? And they were kind of getting quiet and getting on the edge of their seat. And then some of them started looking nervous. I think he saw it about that time, like, oh, God has a plan for me. And they were looking a little nervous when all of a sudden he recognized and he thought he'd better throw something in here. And he said, and it's not your mama's plans. God has a plan for you. But as I stood in the shadows of backstage, I wondered if anybody in that audience perhaps felt like me. I'd grown up with a nickname most of my life. I knew what it was like to feel overlooked and undervalued. Like that can't possibly be true for me. I had a loving aunt. I was walking toward her social circle on one particular occasion. As I was walking toward her, she started talking with some of the people as she was in the circle, and all of a sudden I could hear her say, "Here comes Dwight the Fright." Yeah, some of them laughed and some of them went, "Oh." And the nickname stuck. It was the first day I'd ever heard it out loud. I was that kind of kid that every parent hopes and prays they'll never get. The kind you see in a restaurant or you see in a church building or a public building. You go, oh, I'd never want one of those. And it wasn't my brother, it was me, And we had a lot of board meetings at our house. We didn't have an executive table. There was a board at our house, and I had lots of meetings with it. And I remember on one particular occasion, I had managed to embarrass my family at this social setting. And so it was time in that setting for us to, my dad would say skedaddle, but this time it was different. He turned to me and said, "We're out of here." Oh man, I knew what that meant. We were leaving this gig so early, and we exit the room and we're walking outside. We're walking through the dark toward the family car, when all of a sudden I recognized this walk. This is the death walk. I know where we're going. We're headed for the board. We're going to make this long trip home, and I know what's going to happen. I'm going to have another meeting with the board. When all of a sudden, from the other side of the back of the family car, my sister said, "Dad, Dwight wants to be good." Where'd that come from? I didn't know she was ever my advocate before, so what is that? "Dad, Dwight tries to be good." And I thought, how do you know? I actually do. I tried for 2 full weeks once, and I couldn't pull it off, but he tries to be good. I thought, you go, girl, keep it up. And that's when she drops the death bomb, and she said, "Dad and Mom, Dwight wants to be good. He tries to be good, but he can't be good." It was like something hit the family car, and I was looking out the backseat window thinking, man, she's right. And on that continuous drive, as we were headed home for another one of those moments, I remembered thinking, man, I'm helpless. I'm I'm hopeless. That was until I found out there's somebody who has help for the helpless and hope for the hopeless. I was in my teenage years, and when that news started hitting me, and I started recognizing that I didn't need to perform for that, there wasn't anything I could do to receive that. And in fact, that if I would just get into him and say, I'm in, and let him begin to work in me, some cool stuff would start happening. And then somebody introduced me, and Pastor Jeremy, I love your Pastor Jeremy and Lament. Aren't they awesome? Aren't you so stinking blessed? I was in his office today, and I recognized above his desk were these words that were the first words that really gripped me. Like, I kept thinking, really? Like me? God has a plan for me? The words were straight out of Jeremiah 29:11, where God said through his prophet, I know the plans I have for you. And they're plans to prosper you, not to harm you, to give you a hope and a future. Not only does he have a plan for us, but significantly, you are God's plan. You're a part of this plan. You're invited to say, I'm into his plan for everything he's at work doing. Everything Jesus laid the foundation for at the cross and through the resurrection. You and I, it doesn't matter who I am. What matters is who he is. And he invites me, he invites you to have a part in his plan. I thought, well, if that's true, like, how am I going to figure this out? Like, I don't know where to go. I don't know who to ask. I don't know how to figure this out. It was about that time I was getting connected with Christian people and church people, but this one dude that I had my eyes on, like he went into moral failure. I was telling the church staff team today, and then a TV repairman comes near me, and he just opens up his Bible, and he said, Dwight, would you read this verse? It was Hebrews 12, and it just said, fix your eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter of your faith. And he said, yeah, read that again. I thought, man, what am I missing here? Fix your eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter of your faith. He said, Dwight, you're missing something. Read it again. I thought, what? I opened my eyes like, am I missing a word here? Fix your eyes on Jesus, the author and he said, yeah, Dwight, that's the problem. You've had your gaze too low. You've been fixing your eyes too low. You're wiped out and angry because you've seen hypocrites, what you're calling them now, Dwight. Why don't you raise your gaze and fix your eyes on the only one, Romans 10, and then he took me over to Romans 10:11. The only one that Scripture says anybody who puts their trust in him will never be disappointed. From that day forward, I just went, I'm going to fix my eyes on him. Actually, this was a cool deal. It was Christmas time, and I had given my nephew, I found out it was at the top of his Christmas wish list. He wanted a G.I. Joe Tiger Force helicopter, and when I found out it was cheap, it was actually the least expensive wish on his Christmas wish list, I said to my sister, count me in, like, I'll take that one. You know, least expensive, most desired, I'll take it. So I'm going to be a hero uncle for a year. When I go to Toys R Us while it was still in existence, and I'm buying this thing, I don't know a thing about it other than it's on his list, and he's going to get it from Uncle Dwight. So I wrap it up really cool, and then I put it under the tree, and on Christmas morning, he opens this thing up. He looks like Tigger, bouncing all over the room, all over the wall, like he's so happy, so excited. Uncle Dwight, I can't believe you did this. Brings it over to me. We open the box. It's when I realized it was full of pieces, like scores of pieces, like it looked complicated. Like, I didn't know it didn't come pre-assembled. You had to put this thing together. How in the world? Like, look at all of this. This is probably 2 days worth, you know. And I'm now some of you are going, oh yeah, that's what I love. And I'm not that dude. Let me out. So he looks up at me like, Uncle Dwight, help. And I pull out the instruction sheet, and the instruction sheet, now I don't know how they do this, but it's like a 0.8, or maybe it's 0.6, I don't know. I had to get some reader glasses over, try to read this thing. As I'm opening the thing up, and I get the instruction sheet finally all the way open, and I'm looking at this thing. This is definitely a 48-hour project. I'm reading number one, number two, and I'm looking down for the pieces, and his little hands are down there putting pieces together. What? And I read quickly 5, 6, and 7. He'd already had piece 7. He's working on piece 8. Well, what in the world? I said, well, you might be doing something wrong, but every time I checked the directions, it was actually right. And so I read 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and he's on 14, 15, 16. I dropped the instruction sheet down for a moment. I said to my sister, psst, psst, we may have a genius in the family. This is crazy. Look, watch. I'm on 23, 24, 25, and he's 27, 28, 29. His hands are going so fast, I can't figure out what's going on. And finally, I dropped the instruction sheet and said, have you done this before? He said, nope, never done it before. What? So I'm reading as fast as I can, and the next thing I know, this thing's clicking together so quick, and I heard people laughing in the room. What? Why is everybody laughing? Finally, somebody let me out and said, hey, Dwight, you're reading all the words. You're reading all the words on the instruction sheet. Why don't you look at what he's looking at on the opposite side of the instruction sheet? Anybody want to guess what he's looking at on the other side? Yes, a picture. There's a picture with arrows and how it all goes together. When I was trying to figure out, so how am I going to know the plan? How am I going to live the plan? And then I ran into John. And John 1:14 says, the Word, and I think of all these words, the Word became flesh and lived among us, and we got to see Jesus, full of grace, full of truth. Suddenly, we've got a YouTube model to follow. You know, really, how many of you have ever learned how to do something watching YouTube? Come on, all of us, come on. How many of you have learned how to do something? You look it up on YouTube and you know how to do it. God sent us the first, earliest YouTube model. It was Jesus. God realized we weren't getting it. We didn't understand what it would look like. So he sent the Word in flesh to be the model for us to follow. If we would fix our eyes on Jesus, we'd learn from him. But part of me, still there was like this religious part of me that thought, but I think I have to be perfect, don't I? And that was as I started really just wanting to fix my eyes on Jesus, and I was reading these stories about Jesus, I see this dude that he meets at his workplace one day. His name was Peter, and Jesus meets him at his workplace, and at his workplace, some pretty cool stuff happens that Jesus does. And then Peter's feeling a little unnerved, like this is happening at my workplace, and I don't even know that. I don't deserve this. And so Peter just blurts out the truth. I'm a sinner. I mean, that's literally, I'm a sinner. And I'm reading like I'm poised, like, okay, what's Jesus going to do now? Like here's a dude I can identify. Dwight the Fright can identify with this guy that's saying, I'm a sinner. You know, I can't pull off perfect. What's Jesus going to do? And the next thing I see Jesus do is, hey, come hang out with me, and I'll show you how to lead well, let me ask you a question. How many of you in the room, you want your life to make an impact? You don't want to become extinct without significance. You want your life to have mattered. How many of you, I'm going to put both hands up. I've wanted this since I was a little kid. Like, how many of you want your life to make some sort of an impact in this world? Raise your hand if you want your life to make an impact. I'm looking around here. Man, I'm seeing I think I might be seeing almost every hand. You want your life to make an impact. As long as you got breath, as long as you're living, you want your life to make an impact. And the good news is God does too. He's got a plan for you. So I'm looking at Peter, and Jesus says, come hang out with me, and I'll show you how to lead a high-impact life. And Jesus begins to watch the YouTube model to follow. Peter begins to watch the YouTube model to follow. He begins to watch Jesus. He fixes his eyes on Jesus everywhere they're going. And he's beginning to see something. What is he beginning to see? If Jesus is your YouTube model to follow, and you're fixing your eyes on Jesus, and Jesus is your personal ancient future plan, he's the model for high impact living, then if Jesus is the model for high impact living, what were they seeing? What can I see vicariously through their lens? Well, the first thing that Jesus is modeling is not an upfront plan. In fact, as they kept watching Jesus, they noticed that everywhere Jesus went, he wasn't trying to get up front. In fact, what Jesus, it seemed his aim every day was to not be up front, it was to get up close. His name was Emmanuel. Anybody know what Emmanuel means? What does Emmanuel mean? Anybody know what Emmanuel means? Whoa, you know your stuff. What does it mean? God what?
God with us.
God what?
With us.
Not God up front, God with us, God up close. In fact, one day they asked, where's the kingdom? Now watch me, watch my hand. They asked him, where's the kingdom? Can you see my hand? He said, the kingdom of God is at hand. The kingdom of God is up close, eye to eye, heart to heart, life on life. Can I ask you, do you feel slightly more impacted right now than you did when I was up there?
Amen.
Amen, he says. And some of you are going, okay, he's walking. Is he going to walk toward me? Because I might feel a little more impacted too. Like it's just feeling slightly more impactful right now. Is it? Yeah, he's saying a little bit. See, Jesus was teaching them how to lead a high impact life everywhere he went. So here's a woman nobody wants to be around. And over non-bottled spring water, he doesn't want to give her a speech up front of the synagogue. He just wants to sit over non-bottled spring water and be up close. Because he knows that how people are impacted is when it really is changing things, isn't it? As we're getting closer to one another, something is very different. Like, man, you're a big dude. You're scary. But you're thinking to yourself like, yeah, but I'm the one that's starting to feel uncomfortable right now because right now the dude that was up there is right here. Yeah, you saying a little bit. Mark this down because Jesus was modeling something for them. He wanted them to get it. You may impress from a distance, but you impact up close. See, Mike, impact is happening now. Jesus was teaching them everywhere he went. When the leper was in town and screaming, unclean, unclean, and everybody's jetting the opposite direction, where does Jesus go? Jesus walks straight toward him, and he reaches out, and he touches him. Because that's where impact happens. Most of you would be afraid to be up there. If I would take my microphone off and I'd hand it to you, would you be comfortable doing the rest of this thing tonight? And he said, no. Do you know what they tell us? They tell us that for most people, public speaking is a worse fear than death. I mean, some of you are going, yeah, I hated speech class and I don't want to be up front. Don't come recruiting me to be the up front person. Why is that valuable for you to appreciate and understand? Because Jesus, who was teaching high impact living to a bunch of ordinary people like us, was teaching them, you can impact up close. And most of you aren't afraid to be up close. You love to sit at a meal table with people. You love to sit and talk with people. You like this opportunity to not be up front, but definitely to be up close. Some of you are gifted with up front. And Ephesians 4 says that you're supposed to use that to equip the rest of us to be really impactful up close. But the first thing you need to recognize about the model Jesus gave them to follow as the YouTube example was he didn't teach them an up front plan. He taught them an up close plan. Because he knew all of them could have opportunities every day, everywhere, up close. And he wanted the kingdom of God to come everywhere. Isn't that kind of encouraging to you? Because when you think about your life, like you love to come here for what happens here because it refuels and re-energizes you. But does it encourage you to know that this up-close thing that he modeled, he wasn't teaching a main stage plan, he was teaching a mainstream plan. Not main stage, but mainstream. What does that mean? Have you ever thought about the fact that, he was a builder. You know, like if I were to say, hi, my name's Dwight. What's your name?
Jeff.
Hi, Jeff. Hey, Jeff, what do you do for a living?
I'm a builder.
I'm a builder. So if I were Jesus and I'm meeting him, I'd go, hey, Jeff, I'm a builder too. And that wouldn't make Jeff uncomfortable. It wouldn't make anybody uncomfortable. You think about it, Jesus shows up as a builder in Nazareth. He'd been doing building with his father, Joseph. Now, yeah, probably kind of tongue-in-cheek, too, because he knew that wasn't going to make anybody nervous. Like, listen, when people find out I'm a reverend, I'm a clergy, like it's like, oh, dude, I didn't know you were one of those. I thought you were regular like us. And the next thing I know, they're on the opposite side of the room because I make them nervous, I guess, because of that. They weren't nervous before when they thought I was just a regular guy. Jesus comes on the scene, and he's a builder. He's a regular guy, a carpenter from Nazareth. Sometimes people would say, can anything good come from Nazareth? Where's that little place? You know, it wasn't intimidating. It wasn't big Jerusalem capital city. It's Nazareth. And think about the guys he chose, because he wasn't out to intimidate people. He was out to be up close to people. The people he chose, not one of them was a graduate of a leading rabbi training school. Come on. They were all regular people. James and John, you're small business owners. I could use a couple guys like you. Hey, Matthew, you're working for IRS collecting taxes for the government. I could use a guy like you. You're a good accountant. You'll keep good track of stuff. Every single one of them were mainstream people. We don't see any record that any of them knew how to do anything main stage. They just knew how to do life mainstream. And actually, most of the stories you love to read of Jesus were happening out at people's workplaces, like where Peter met him, where Matthew met him, where most of them met him. Whether it was over non-bottled spring water or when they were just walking down the road screaming unclean and he reached out and touched them. Everywhere you watch Jesus go, he was kind of bringing the kingdom outside the walls in the mainstreams of life. And how was he doing it? Because some of you think, if I'm going to have an impact, I got to get thousands of people together if I'm going to make an impact. Let me reintroduce you to something. When I would be dropped off at my grandmother's house, because my parents deserved a break, you know. Parents who are raising a kid like me, you know, every now and then they need a break, like a breather. So they'd drop me off at Grandma's house. Now, I can remember when we'd get to Grandma's house, that she always had a plan to harness and direct my energy. So one of the things she loved to do was reach in her downstairs closet, and she pulled down a big tin of dominoes, like hundreds and hundreds of dominoes in this big tin box. And she'd dump them all over her dining room table. Let me ask you, how many of you have ever lined up dominoes before? Have you ever lined up dominoes? I mean, it takes a while to do because, you know, sometimes it's prematurely. Okay, here we go. Start again. So I'm starting to line up all her dominoes on her dining room table, and she's got a massive dining room table. When I'm lining up all these dominoes, eventually there's so many hundreds of them. Grandma's off in the kitchen baking chocolate chip cookies, and she made good ones. And so I'm in there, but I'm focused, man. I'm gonna. Every single one of these dominoes is going to be in place. When I finally get the last one in place, I yelled at Grandma to come in, but she lived in one of these old houses that would almost move when you'd creak, when you'd move. So, Grandma, walk slow and careful. So I don't want this to happen before I'm in control, and I want this to happen. And so finally she gets over right beside me, and I'm just about to touch that domino when she reached out and grabbed my arm and yanked my arm back. Said, grandson, no. Before you do that, I want you to pretend. Now, this was way before the Disney movie, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. So she's way ahead of her time. She said, I want you to pretend you're so small that all you can see is one domino in front of you. You don't know there's a number 59 or 370 or 412. It just looks like one because you're so small, that's all you can see. But grandson, don't forget that if you impact that one just right, it'll impact another, that'll impact another, that'll impact another. You don't have to worry about number 13 or 57 or 912. You worry about the one that's in front of you and let the domino ripple effect take place. That is exactly what Jesus was modeling for them. They would watch him with this dude, you know, here's a guy over here, here's a gal over here. And then they'd see like these kingdom explosions happen eventually over that. Like I know Pastor Jeremy, like he has said to me several times, you don't remember me. And then today he said to me, do you remember the kid with the long hair? And he had a brother with long hair. It all came back. I do remember. I remember it so well. I mean, that's been, 34 years ago? But I remember this young teenage kid who was in front of me. And I remember the intensity of what was going on in his heart and life. I remember praying for him regularly for a while after that. I remember knowing that God was lighting a fire in that heart. I didn't see you. I didn't see any of this. I didn't see Metro City Church. It was one. I remember watching over time, everywhere that life would take me, if I just focus on the one life in front of me, like the little lady who's on the treadmill next to me on Saturday, and she said, well, I'm Jewish, and I said, well, I'm Christian, and I love all the stuff that you gave to us because, man, we got the 10 Commandments, and we have the Pentateuch, and we have the Psalms, and we have, listen, I'm all for you, and we started having this conversation, and I'm in my head, I'm literally thinking, because now I know it's never just one. I'm thinking about her daughter and her son, and I'm thinking about her grandkids. I'm thinking about all her friends. I'm thinking about this. I'm thinking about that. Because the amazing thing I've learned by reading the scriptures is Jesus gave us a record of so many times when he would impact one, and you get to see domino ripple effects starting to take place. Jesus modeled for us as the Word in flesh how to live out the plan up close in the mainstreams, one life at a time. That's doable. But he also, as this YouTube model, he showed us methods. And his methods are so cool. In fact, Matthew chapter 9, Matthew wants you to know that when he met Jesus up close in the mainstreams, Jesus saw him. I want you to put your hands in front of your eyes for a moment and just say the word see when I count to 3 and pull them away. So you're going to say the word see. When you pull them away, you're going to say see when I count to 3. Ready? Let's do this. We're all going to look ridiculous together. Come on, we're all going to do this. You can't be too cool for this. You ready? 1, 2, 3, see. Jesus' method was to what? To see. Let's do it again. Jesus' method was to what? To see. See who was in front of him. In Matthew chapter 9, in his own hometown, that's where you start. You always start with your homies. You all start in your own hometown. In his own hometown in Matthew chapter 9, Matthew keeps good record and account of things. He lets you know that in Jesus' own hometown, there were 4 dudes that were worried that they had a friend that Jesus wasn't going to see because there was this crowded place, and so they cut a hole in the roof to drop their friend in so Jesus could see him. But then Matthew goes on and says, as Jesus went on from there, he saw a man. And Matthew's going to start telling you his story because Jesus' method was to see. How big a deal is that, to see somebody? Well, ask my son. In the 2nd grade, he's transitioned to a new school because of a move and circumstances in our lives. And after about 2 weeks at this new school, I said, so we're at the dinner table, 2 weeks have gone by. I think that's kind of enough so I'm home from travel. I said, hey, son, how's it going at your new school? He said, Dad, I'm invisible. I said, what? He said, Dad, I'm invisible. I said, I'm sorry, son. I looked at my wife like, what's this mean? Like, I'm thinking he's watched too many superhero flicks, so I'm afraid he's going to hurt himself. He thinks he's Invisiman. So I gotta help this guy. So I looked at him and said, son, put your fork down. He got real serious and put his fork down. And I said, son, I see you. You're not invisible. He said, Dad, I know you see me, but Dad, at this new school, like when it's time for morning recess, they all run out, and Dad, I'm standing right there, and they're running past me. They're looking for each other, Dad, because they know each other. So they're looking for each other, and they all run around me, and they run past me. And then I get to the cafeteria at lunchtime, Dad, and I get my tray, and I go in and sit down, and Dad, they're all looking for the people that they went to school with last year together. They're looking for, and Dad, they look straight past me. They look around me, they look past me, they walk beyond me, and then after school, I wait 13 minutes while Mom's picking up my sister at her school. 13 minutes, Dad. Everybody's walking all around me, Dad. Everybody's walking all around me and nobody sees me, Dad. I'm invisible, Dad. I'm invisible. My father's heart is breaking in this moment. My son feels invisible. Do you know how many people feel that way every day? She's been your checkout clerk at Walmart before. She recognizes you as you're fumbling for your wallet or your purse, but do you see her? She wishes she didn't have to work today because she's got 2 kids sick at home, but she doesn't have anybody else to pay the bills. Do you see her? He's actually worked on your car before at this large mechanic place you go, and he knows, you recognize your name, but do you see him, or is he just the mechanic. You know, there's one tribe in Africa, when somebody's walking toward them, they'll say, I see you. And the person walking in their direction will say, I am here. And it's the gift of presence. On one occasion, we were on the west side of Denver metro area where we live, and our daughter had finished a performance over there, and so we were looking for food. We were hungry afterward, and we found out, you know what a Red Robin restaurant is? We found a Red Robin restaurant, so we're going to go out for some food. And we get in there, and the place is jammed with people, and we suddenly count servers, and we realize they don't have enough people serving tables. And that's when I noticed this one young guy who was running around, and I counted 20 tables he was trying to keep track of before he got to ours. By the time he got to ours, he's literally profusely sweating, and he gets up to our table and says, yes? And I said, are you okay, John? He said, what? I said, John, are you okay? Dude, do I know you? I said, well, I don't think so, John. We live on the east side of the metro area. We've never been over here before. We've never been to this restaurant, but man, I'm seeing how many tables you're serving, and look, man, you're sweating like crazy. Are you okay, John? Dude, you're freaking me out. Why are you calling me John? Why are you calling me John? Like, somebody tell you, like, or you just, like, you were just trying because it's kind of a common name, because that's actually my name. How did you do that? Like, that's, wow. How'd you do that? And I said, well, I didn't even want to tell him. I hit his chest. I said, you're wearing it, John. It's right there. He looked down and went, oh, dude. Why had John forgotten that he was wearing his name? Because nobody sees John. He's the waiter. They call their order over their shoulder. Oh, and I want fries with that too. Oh, and make that Coke a large. He's just the waiter. But Matthew wants you to know that people in need never felt invisible in Jesus' presence. Jesus wouldn't allow that. If they were in his presence, they weren't going to feel invisible. He was going to see them. Matthew tells you, even as Jesus went on from there, because in other words, Jesus is just going, it's kind of like you going from Walgreens, you're going to go to Walmart, and then you got one more run to the grocery store. I mean, it's just, Matthew just says as Jesus went on from there, there's a whole lot of stories that start with Jesus seeing somebody as he was just moving around, the way you move around every day. In other words, it wasn't a scheduled meeting at the synagogue, because Matthew wouldn't have been there. He wouldn't have been there. He wasn't looking for those people or those buildings. He was just out there making money on the street, and he was looking for people. And most of the time, people took the sidestep around Matthew because they didn't want him after their money. And besides, he's a traitor. He's working with the Romans, and he's not on our team. But Matthew wants you to know, as Jesus went on from there, his little words were, he saw a man named Matthew. That's the way he writes it. Jesus saw a man named Matthew sitting at his workplace, at his tax collector's booth. You know, when you learn and speak a person's name, it communicates high value. It enables you to pray for that person by name after you leave them. And for many people, would you think about it? How many of you think that maybe you're where you're at today because somebody prayed for you by name? A mother, a grandmother, a father, somebody, you know? Do you know how many people who are the invisible people walking around? Do you know how many of them who haven't been seen have never had a grandma or a mother or a dad or a grandfather or a brother or a sister or a friend pray for them? Nobody calls their name out before the throne. And you already know from Pastor Jeremy's message last week that when man works, but when man prays, God works. How about you learning their name so you can speak it before him? Jesus' method was to see people along the way. And to see with compassion is always going to lead you to next steps. So Jesus, who tells us this cool story in Luke chapter 10 about the Good Samaritan, who felt compassion after the Good Samaritan sees this guy alongside of the road. Because compassion always inspires you to ask, what can I do to help? What can I do to help? So if you're going to see, it's going to lead you to Let's all look like patrol guards. Put your stop hands out. Stop! You're going to save all the kindergarten children. You're going to stop the traffic. Stop! You're going to save the children. Come on. We're all going to do this. We're going to stop. This is what Jesus wants you to know. You don't only see, but you what? Stop. You see and stop. See and, oh, you're good. Some of you are doing this already. If we're going to be Jesus followers, we're going to do what? We're going to see and stop. Matthew wants you to know that's what Jesus did with him. Jesus saw a man named Matthew, and he stopped with him. How many of you like to eat? Come on, I'm going to put both hands up. I like to eat. How many of you like to eat? Hands up, hands up. Look at you. You've got great ministry potential if you're a Jesus follower. Because where does Jesus stop with Matthew? Where does he stop with him? At a meal table. The next thing you know in the scriptures, Jesus is sitting at Matthew's meal table with him, because most of us aren't nervous to sit with people over meal tables. And the religious people said, hey, why is your teacher Jesus, why is he hanging out up close with those people at a meal table? They asked Jesus' disciples. Interesting. Jesus said, because I haven't come to call the righteous, but I've come to be up close in the mainstreams of life is the way that I would give them a vernacular to it. One life at a time, to call those that are willing to be seen and stopped with. And I'm at Matthew's table because this is where lives are transformed. How many of you know that the best ideas in the world were written at table napkins? Why is that? Because we sit at tables and we exchange our ideas at tables. That's where we tell our stories. Do you know that your Jesus story is waiting for a meal table that you already confessed you love? Where at meal tables, we just exchange. How many of you learned your family stories at holiday meal tables? You sat around the table and, Grandpa and Uncle Joe, everybody told the family stories. How many of you learned your family? Come on, learned your family stories at meal tables. That's what happened to you. That's why at meal tables, we are literally stopped and everybody knows we're going to get past, hi, how are you? I'm fine. Oh, good. See you. Have a great day. We get past that stuff because we're stopped. And Jesus wants you to know if you want to lead a high impact life, you're going to see and stop. Oh man, this is sounding doable, isn't it? Do you know when Jesus told the Good Samaritan story, if you're not familiar with that, there was a guy who had been beat up and robbed, and he'd been left on the side of the road. The first person who comes down the road next is a religious priest. And the Bible, in Jesus' story about this religious priest, says the priest saw him, so he got that far. But then it says he passed by on the other side, because he didn't want whatever he had on the schedule to be stopped or pulled back. Jesus said another important person called a Levite came down the road, and he could see the guy there, but it said he passed by. He took the other side of the road and passed by. And then Jesus picked the most unlikely candidate for high impact in their eyes, a Samaritan. They thought of those people as like dogs. And he said, but the good Samaritan, if there was such a thing, the good Samaritan saw and walked over and what? Come on, let me hear you. He stopped. That was Jesus' YouTube modeling. First through his life, then through his story to say, if you're willing to see and you're willing to stop, what'll happen along that path is that you'll begin to see what the needs are, and you'll go above and beyond to meet those needs, because the love of Christ will be poured into your heart by the Holy Spirit. And you'll want to be with them a little further than just, oh, wow, that's too bad. But you're going to be asking yourself, compassion is different than sympathy. Sympathy says, I'm sorry. Compassion says, I'm sorry, what can I do to help? And Jesus was often moved with compassion. He wanted people to learn how to see, stop, and then understand what the seasoned guy named Jim Elliot, who had such an impact with his life, said, just wherever you are, be all there. Wherever you are, be all there in that moment. Paul's letter to the Ephesians would have said, live a life of love. And then Jesus looked around at all humanity. Everywhere he looked, he could see needs. He could see more needs than he knew what to do with. They were everywhere. Oh my word, they're everywhere. And he turned to his disciples and said, there's opportunity, there's harvest everywhere. Everywhere you go. So you get in the long line at the grocery store and they're going to do a price check and you're going, oh, but do you see the dude in front of you? He's got all kinds of medicine in his hand. He's got a sick family at home and he doesn't even know how to do what he's doing. He hardly has enough money to pay for it. Do you see him? Will you not only stop, but I call it spend time with in that moment. Spend time with. Most people say the way you spell love is T-I-M-E. Spend time with. Hey, sir, can't help but notice you got a bunch of medicine in your hand. Everything okay? I mean, that wasn't hard. You didn't have to get on a stage to do that. No, everything's not okay. My family's really sick and I'm really worried. We don't have enough money to take them to the doctor. Well, maybe that's why we're in line together. Like, I love to pray. What's your name, sir? I'll pray for you and your family. Suddenly, he's got somebody in the boat with him. He doesn't feel quite as alone. Suddenly, in that moment, he feels like, wow, maybe he sees me. How did that happen? How was I just moments before thinking, I feel so all alone. I feel like I'm doing this all alone. And then suddenly this person in line at the grocery store sees me. Was that you? Prompting them? Absolutely. Absolutely. No wonder Jesus turned to his disciples and said, the harvest is ripe, but the laborers are few. The laborers are few. What's a labor? It's just somebody who's willing to roll up their sleeves and do whatever needs done. It's just somebody who says, hey, I don't need a spotlight. I don't need a microphone. Just show me the next person, God, you want me to see. Show me the next person that you need somebody to see and to stop and to spend time with. Do you know there are a lot of us in this room that you haven't realized that what Jesus was looking for was you. He was looking for somebody who was willing to be the answer to his great harvest need. When he looked at his disciples, he shared with them the one word that was his answer for the great harvest opportunities. When he said, the harvest is ripe, but the laborers are few. I used to, 36 years ago, as I just started sharing with people, listen, I'm Dwight the Fright. If he could use me, come on, he can use anybody. When I started fixing my eyes on Jesus, and I recognized he wasn't asking me to be perfect. When I looked at Peter, who said, I'm a sinner, and Jesus said, come hang out with me. I'll teach you how to lead a high-impact life. I went, Jesus, I'm in. I want to be in. I want to be in. I want my life to make an impact. I'm going to fix my eyes on you. And then I began to see that I didn't have to be up front if I just was willing to be up close with the next person. Up close with the next person. In the mainstreams, one life at a time, see, stop, spend time with. More kingdom laborers are what Jesus is looking for. He's looking for you. What's a kingdom labor? Raise your right hand in the air as high as you can get it. Right hand in the air, high as you can get it. I'm looking. Is that as? Come on. That's as high as you can get your hand? Hey, he got his hand higher than yours. How do you do that? How's he got his hand higher than? I said, put your right hand as high in the air as you can get it. That's as high as you can get it. That's as high. Oh, look at you, man. You're on your chair now. Yes. Now sit down for a minute. I want to teach you something. When Jesus was given the pop quiz and they said, what's the most important thing? And he said, to love God with all your everything. How much is that? Well, could you raise it a little higher? Could you love him a little bit more? Could you love him a little bit more? Could you love him a little bit more? Do you know the best gift you're going to give this world that you see, stop and spend time with, is your intimacy with God? Because the more you're with him, the more he's going to show up everywhere you show up, every place you're going all day long. Everywhere your feet are going, he's going. He's going. He's going. So that's the first part of what Jesus, the labor zeal. And then he said there's just really two things that matter. love God with all your everything. Can you love him a little bit more? And then he said, there's one other thing. Now take your left arm and just turn it out horizontal. Right now. Yeah, I'm going to hit somebody. Yeah, that's your neighbor. That's your neighbor for now. But an hour from now, can I tell you something? An hour from now, your hand's going to be near somebody new and different. Will you see them? Because your neighbor is not your geographical address. Who's next door to you? Your neighbor is, as your feet are moving around, your neighbor is whoever you get near. So my son who learns to love God with all his everything and love that person he's near, in the school that he felt invisible, as he began to learn what we teach people everywhere around the world to do, he said, Dad, Tommy gave his heart to Jesus in the cafeteria today. I said, what? He said, oh, Dad, I got to tell you. Now I'm thinking back to when I come home from a board meeting and my son Drayson says, Dad, I got called to the principal's office today. And I said, whoa, what? Now, everybody always told Dwight the Fright, like, you're going to have kids just like you. You just see, that's the way God gets even with people like you. You're going to have kids just like you. So when my son said he got called to the principal's office, I'm thinking, oh, no, it's happening now. I said, son, I was trying to stay so calm, like what would, James Dobson lives down the road from me. He's a child psychologist. What would he say to do in this moment? I tried to stay so calm, and I said, so son, tell me about it. He said, well, Dad, she asked what you do for a living. And I told, you're a minister. And she said, where? And I told her, Forge Kingdom Building Ministry. She said, what is that? And I told her, you teach people how to love God more and how to love other people better. And she told me that's the problem. She told me she's the boss of the school. She's the principal, and she told me that I'm not supposed to do that, not at recess. I'm not supposed to do it in our classroom. I'm not supposed to do it in the cafeteria. I'm not even supposed to do it, Dad, she said, in our neighborhood or at the park, only inside a church building or inside our house, and she's the boss. And I said, well, wait a minute, son. Are you an American citizen? He said, Dad, what's that have to do with what I just told you? And I said, a lot. So far, we got freedom of religion and freedom of speech. And we talked about that, and whoa, we couldn't wait to get to school the next day. And so then we talked a little bit about diplomacy, and how you walk that out. So when he says, hey, Dad, Tommy gave his life to Jesus in the cafeteria today, I said, he did? What happened? He said, oh, Dad, it was so cool. Dad, I got my tray, and I was coming out with my tray. Dad, he was sitting all by himself. Dad, I could totally see him. I know he felt invisible, but I saw him. So, Dad, I walked over with my tray and I said, Tommy, you want somebody to sit with you? He did, Dad. He really did. So, Dad, I sat down with Tommy. I stopped. And I'm sitting with him in the cafeteria, and we're spending time talking, and we start talking about Christmas, and then I told him what the real meaning was, and he'd never heard any of it. I told him about the nativity, and I told him why Christmas happened and why Jesus came, and he wondered where I heard that, because he'd never heard that before. And Dad, I just took him through the whole thing, and he gave his life to Jesus today in the cafeteria. We got to get him a Bible. Now let me ask you a question, and it's not a trick question. Was my son in that moment, Jesus' answer to the great harvest need, was my son a laborer in that moment? Yes. Was he doing what Jesus, the YouTube model, taught, just to see and to stop with Tommy and spend time with Tommy at a meal table, up close in the mainstreams at his school, one life at a time? See, here's great news. Jesus is an equal opportunity employer. Everybody gets a chance. That is, everybody who's willing to say, I'm in. I'm in. You don't want to imagine that you hope, maybe some days you imagine like, I hope my life will have an impact. But tonight, Jesus, the model to follow, has shown you how. He's shown you that loving God with all your everything and then loving that person you're near in the moment in a simple way. You don't have to be an upfront speaker. You're just going to be willing to see that little girl in your neighborhood who nobody else sees, but you do now. And you're learning her name. What's your name, Ashley? Oh, and now you're praying for Ashley. And now you're, and then there's this kid at your school, and he sits in geometry, and nobody really talks to him, but suddenly you see him. There's this dude at work. There's somebody you met at the store today, or your spouse sends you to the store to pick something up, and You didn't realize that Walmart had rearranged all their aisles, and you thought the paper towels were supposed to be here, and now you're making your way around the aisle, and you make your way around an end cap, and Jesus is going, I hope they, because that little lady's been standing in the middle of the aisle for 10 minutes crying. She lost her husband 2 weeks ago, and she's been crying in the middle of the aisle at Walmart. Jesus sees her, but he's needing a laborer. And you're coming around the end cap at Walmart, and you're walking down, and like, I get nervous when people cry. Like, I don't know what I'm going to do. But will you not be nervous? Will you see her? And will you walk over and stop? Hey, I couldn't help but notice you're crying. Are you okay? No. Ma'am. My name's Dwight. I'm here looking for paper towels. But Jesus was looking for Gladys, who was missing her husband on this day. And he needed a laborer to see her and say, Gladys, you're not alone. Hey, Gladys, here's my telephone number. And I'm a praying man. I'd love to just keep praying for you. And I want you to know if you need anything, my wife and I, just call us. We have this wonderful church we go to. I don't even get to tell them because they live too far in my neighborhood from Metro City, but you got a cool place to tell them about. But tonight, it's not enough to hear a message like this. Some of you are thinking to yourself, I could love them a little bit more. I need to love them. I want to love them a little bit more. I want to. And if that's the first part of the laborer's L, like to love them with all my everything, and then the other is just to love that person near me, like I don't need a stage, a platform, a microphone. I could probably do that, particularly now that Jesus has shown me how. Pop quiz, can you do it with me? If we're Jesus followers, what are we going to do? I need to make sure you know how to do it, because when you walk out of here, it could be tomorrow. There's going to be 3 opportunities for you. I hope you won't miss them. I hope people won't be invisible around you. If you're a Jesus follower, you're going to what? You're going to see, say it out loud. You're going to what? You're going to see, and you're going to stop, and you're going to spend time with. Amen. I started to tell you that 36 years ago, I used to write at the end of my letters, the harvest is ripe. Just what Jesus said, the harvest is ripe, but the laborers are few. And I used to wonder, why are they few? Maybe it's because people don't know. This equal opportunity employer, Jesus, picked a bunch of riffraff people like us, like Dwight the Frightened, like you, and he's going, come on. But he's waiting for you to say, I'm in. I'm in. I don't want to watch from the sidelines. I don't want to raise my hand the rest of my life. I want my life to make an impact. I want to make these 2 things, loving God and loving people, and doing this on a daily basis as a practice. I want to be a laborer. This week, I just want to arm you for how to get over yourself and get into God's plan for your life. He's the one who's the author. He's going to help it happen through you. I'm telling you, if he can use me, he can use anybody. Can I invite you to do something tonight? There's 2 things you can do. If physically you're not able to move, that's one thing. But somehow you got in here tonight, so I'm going to ask you to do something beyond your comfort, whether that's to stand up, even if you got to hold on to the chair in front of you because that's physically what you're able to do. Others of us, it would be a good thing for us to recognize, because I've been looking at your feet. Like I'm looking at all these different tennis shoes along the front here. I'm looking at these. Do you know why these feet, according to Romans 10:15, are beautiful feet? Jesus said, because your feet move. When my son Drayson walked into that cafeteria, my feet weren't there. It was a little second grader's feet who were there. Jesus said, how beautiful are the feet. Buildings don't have feet. People do. And your feet are going to move out of here. And your feet are going to go all over the place. All over the place. That's the plan. That's the plan. You're going to sit in different classes, different workplaces, different neighborhoods, different spaces at the gym, and everywhere your feet go. So I would encourage the rest of us, if you're physically able, why don't you get your feet down here to just say, Jesus, my feet are yours, my life is yours, I'm in. And I want to pray a prayer. I'm going to ask Pastor Jeremy to come up and join me. But if you want to be a kingdom laborer for the rest of your life, Jesus style, because he's YouTubed it for you, and you understand it more fully tonight, or you're re-enlisting, you've been enlisted for your life, but tonight it's like, one up, I'm re-enlisting, this is me. Well, just stand up from wherever you are, and let's just fill up these places around the front. And I want to pray over your ministry, because your feet are going to go out of here, and people aren't going to feel invisible around you. They're going to be seen, they're going to be loved, they're going to be up close to somebody where Christ is housed in you. The hope of glory, Christ is housed in you. He's not housed in a building, he's housed in you. We love to gather together where he is. We gather here, but he's in you. That's what we teach children when they're little. That's what they're being taught over here. Where does Jesus live? He lives in you. So every time you get near somebody else, he's near them. And as you see them, he is seeing with you. And as you're in that moment and in that space, will you let him just begin to do these fresh, new, abundant things through you? Tomorrow, I'm going to just spend fun time with you, equipping you for the work that God's positioned you for in life. You're in the mainstreams. Most of you would say, my name isn't Reverend Clergy Dr. So-and-so. And the world would go, yeah, that's why I like to be with you. And they're comfortable being up close. They just don't know when they get up too close to you, they're up close to Jesus. When they sit at lunch with you or over coffee with you, they're up close to him. And that is the plan. Pastor Jeremy, where are you at? I just want to pray over you. And I taught your church staff today a way that I often pray. This was the way Israelites would pray before Jehovah Jireh, their provider. They'd just cup their hands before him like this, as if to say to Jehovah Jireh, their God, I know everything I need comes from you. And they would just lift their hands like, I know you're the one that pours it in so I can pour it out. I can't pour out what I haven't taken in. That's why your best gift is keep loving them with more and more and more of you. Don't be docile about that, because your best gift to this world is going to be your intimacy with God. So make that the first part of your labor is, I'm going to love you more. So I want more of you, more of you, more of your will, more of your glory in me. But then, Lord, I'm not going to miss the opportunities around me every day to see, stop, and spend time. And one life at a time, bring you and your kingdom there. My feet are on the move for you. And I wanted your pastor I just have so much respect and appreciation for him. I wanted him to pray for you, because let me tell you something. This is a congregation of ministers. Everywhere you go, you have congregations of opportunity and influence. They tell me statistically the most inhibited person in this room right now will influence at least 10,000 people in an average lifespan. That's a lot of impact. So, Pastor, these are labors to take the kingdom of God here, there, and everywhere. That's what we're going to talk about this week. How do I live out the plan? Loving God with all my everything. And then loving those people that he's positioned me to bring the kingdom to.